Welcome to my humble abode. I'm Yorkie the Talespinner, and this Tales Over Coffee. Our morning show where we start the day together with a narrative tale and a coffee in the hope of welcoming a blessed day together. This is Suzerain, the tale of Anton Rain's presidency in Sordland. Looks like we have demands coming in on security and other issues. That's the media star. This is economic relief plan. Let's meet with media star first. Well, a media mogul. We were heading to the meeting location set by Marcel Caronti. The motorcade was made up from the most confidential and trustworthy team. After a few hours of driving along River Escale, we took a turn before entering Conrad. The darkness started setting in as we drove up the hill. Now we search. We're nearing the HOS Country Club, Mr. President. We'll be there shortly. We arrived and the big iron gates of the country club opened. It was huge and outright extravagant. The main building, inspired by Lesbian architecture, was lit from all sides. Rather chilly, I was approached by Peter Victon and Lucien Galland. I hope the journey was comfortable, said Peter. Wasn't bad. I'm looking forward to this meeting. I'm sure it will be worth our time, said Lucien. He is a Caronti after all. Let's get personal. Let's enter the building. After opening the marble engraved wooden door, we were greeted by two tall women. Receptionists led us to the meeting room upstairs. Marcel was standing by the window, looking outside at the beautiful complex. He turned around to have a quick look at us both. He was a really handsome man with well-groomed hair. He walked toward me with his hand reaching for a handshake. Reach out. Had a firm grip. It is such a pleasure to meet you in person, Mr. Caronti. I appreciate your efforts to reach out for a mutually beneficial friendship. Thanks for hosting us, said Peter. I admired your father very much. May he rest in peace. Welcome, said Marcel. Your kind words have touched me, Mr. Vice President. He was indeed a great man. Please accept our condolences. We are saddened. He would have been very happy to hear this from you, Mr. President. It's time to look forward. Let's talk about our bright future. There is much to discuss. Believe it or not, I have I've been a secret admirer of your political success. I find your quick rise to power was shockingly well executed. Yes, give him some admiration too. Marcel gently pointed at the seats. We sat down around a gigantic table before speaking. He knocked on wood. The past months have been tumultuous, to say the least. I'm glad you and your family were unharmed in the shooting. The whole incident must have been a shock for the kids. They aren't used to what we lived through back in the late 20s. I still remember when my father took us out of the country and when it became too dangerous in Conrad. They were startled, but the important thing is they are safe and sound. Of course, that is all that matters. No family should suffer from tragedy ever again. We had enough of that. Well, I am known to be a straightforward person, so let me get to the point without wasting your valuable time. It was during the Alfonso campaign when I was struck by what you have done within the party. Marcel started to look at one of the paintings on the wall. Look at the painting, see what he's seeing. The famous piece depicted a giant sleeping beneath a village. The trees, rivers, and hills were all part of the giant's body. Its eyes were two caves looking up at the people. It showed daylight at the far left and nighttime at the far right. The giant seemed to be watching the village. It was totally unbeknownst to the villagers. Marcel pointed his finger at me. You said we will transform this nation, Mr. Rain. My conglomerate is a way of doing things, and I don't want them to change. So I want to cooperate with you. Please explain further. You might have the people's support now, Mr. President, but what happens when you make mistakes? Everybody makes mistakes. What is that supposed to mean? Asked Peter. Let's get to the point, let's get to the point, Vice President, said Lucian. Being a president, said Marcel, in this country means having many enemies that would resort to anything to bring you down. Let's say these enemies caused a scandal or leaked sensitive information from the administration. These would be destructive when they were released, if they were released. Continue. Assume that the articles would actually protect your integrity no matter what. Try to imagine how up to 5 million people I will reach will not lose faith in you. What do you want in return? I want two things, Mr. President. Number one is a guarantee from you that the Reign administration won't meddle in HOS affairs, no matter what happens. Number two is a simple gentleman's favour for the future. Let me prove my services to you first, and I'm sure you won't disapprove when the time comes. It's an interesting proposal. It's also a risky one. I do like the idea of having the media on side. Not just interesting, but necessary. You surely know that this is a win-win situation. The media will be on your side, strengthening your position. It will also protect my business operations throughout the changes this country will see. What do you think about this, Lucian? Lucian leaned to my ears and whispered, I think it's a good deal. He is right, we will need the media support. With his newspapers and channels on our side, we can dodge a lot of bullets. The one thing that bothers me, though, is the favour request. We do not know what this is, and he could ask for something that could point fingers at us. Marcel interrupted us. So, do we have a deal? Yes, I want to work with him. As I said, power in a few hands. His could be some of those hands if he works with us. If he stings us in the back, we will sink him. Happy to hear that. You can contact me personally through this number. As soon as you know that a story against you will break, please call me and it will be taken care of. I hope you will uphold your end of the bargain as well. A deal is a deal. Man of his word, excellent. We will meet again. Goodbye. Thank you for your time, Mr. Caronte. Return to Holsword. His family has also successfully run the newspaper businesses, so that is the media businesses, in fact. So that is a thing. Report from Enrica. One of our agents, acting as a young swords member, had an encounter with two members of the local police of Enrica, Alsambola and Vic Nezi. According to the report, the policeman tried to bribe the agent to burn down the store that belongs to a non-Communist Party member to instigate further violence. We have detained the policeman on charge of corruption. Good, to get them off the streets. Read the report from Holsword. Kizaru Kibna demands emergency to be called. The leader of the NFP, Kizaru Kibna, has demanded an emergency be called to address the increasing political violence in the country. Stated that without a declaration of emergency, Sordland would be destabilised, and the integrity of the country would be damaged even further. Economic Relief Plan. With the assistance of the National Business Council and the Central Bank, Simon Hull put forward a countrywide relief plan to mitigate the economic hardship that are being felt. It can either provide stimulus checks for people in need, or bail out businesses under serious financial strain, or decide not to approve the plan. And we can only do one. I want to help the people. The problem is just giving out money, while it can be a very short-term assistance, also leads to inflation and other economic problems. We already have a buttload of economic problems. Bailing out businesses can help them get back on their feet and can help them with employment and so forth. But it can also reward businesses that are behaving badly by relieving them of their responsibility. There's good and bad to both of those. But I think the largest possible gain would be the businesses. This is so difficult. Or I could not enact the plan at all. No, we'll take care of businesses. And with this, we have another funeral of Bernard Circus, a decision to attend the funeral. Yes, of course we will. The death of Bernard Circus has shocked the country, and his funeral will be held in Dyer among a large crowd of sympathisers. Circus was not only a communist poet, but also an elected MP that had a voice. A state funeral has been organised to honour him. The question is whether the President... Of course we will. Two news articles. One from the Radical. People forgotten again. It wasn't much of a surprise to see the administration help businesses, especially when considering people like Simon Hall are running the Ministry of Economy. President Rain must really be convinced by the brainwashed capitalists around him to think that businesses running on a profit motive will care about workers at all. It's difficult. It's difficult. There were problems with both. When was the last time business owners and the oligarchs pushed for better employment rights or unemployment benefits? Did they ever allow more holidays or extra pay for overtime? No. So the workers bear the burdens and businesses leeching off their backs get the billions of rent worth of bailouts. No surprise, dear readers, people forgotten again. Businesses are alive and well. The government has made an excellent move to push for economic relief for businesses. The bailout is saving thousands and thousands of jobs and softening the economic blow. The genius move led by President Rain will play out very well in the years to come. The administration must focus on boosting employment to make sure the working class have food security and shelter in a time where their livelihoods are threatened. Some National Business Council members have already come out with positive messages, and there have been positive statistics released by the central bank as a result of the bailout. Sordland is racing towards growth and recovery. Yes, but can it be growth for everyone? It needs to be, but can it be? Funeral of Bernard Circus. Dark clouds are looming over Dyer. They looked daunting as our convoy started approaching the century-old cemetery. It looked like it was going to rain, certainly fitting weather for a funeral. As expected, Bernard Circus's passing maintained its media traction, and all of Sordland was paying attention to the ceremony, especially to what I would say in my speech today. So we have arrived, said Serge. Raindrops were running down the car window when Serge opened my door and held an umbrella over my head. As soon as I got out, flashes from the cameras behind me. Okay, Serge, I'll hold my own umbrella. As you wish, sir. I don't want to be seen to be making my driver hold an umbrella for me while he gets soaked. He handed me an umbrella and started waiting next to the car with his own. Petra and Carl exited their own cars in convoy. They made their way over to me. Petra, Vector, and Anton. Mr. President, said Carl. I just wanted to inform you that the perimeter is clear and secured completely. There is no one getting in or out without our knowledge. We don't want something similar happening again, do we? Absolutely not, Mr. President, said Carl. The same mistakes will never happen again. I personally made sure of that. Good, said Peter. If anything happens to Anton, you will have to answer to the First Lady. And trust me, Carl, you don't want that. So. Peter let out a laugh which drew some attention from bereaved attendees. Yes, Peter, let's rein that in. Peter, you're being inconsiderate. Alright, sorry. It started to rain. Several unintelligible voices were heard from Carl's radio. He stepped out to reply and returned shortly. We have a small problem, sir. A few, 5 to be exact, Red Youth members are here to attend the funeral. They apparently said they wish to pay their respects to their fallen comrade. Should we let them in? Do they pose a security threat? No, they were thoroughly searched. It looks like they really are here to attend the funeral. Let them in, but put a few guards on them. As you command. Let's head over. They're about to start. We walked toward the crowd circling around the grave. Everyone in attendance was wearing black in mourning. The rain started pouring heavily. Bernard's widow and daughter were there in the front row, staring at the coffin, with a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and above all, a cold, unforgiving sadness. Both of their eyes were very red and swollen from weeping. Before taking my place to observe the ceremony, I gave my condolences to Bernard's wife and his daughter, who looked at me. She reminded me of Diana. When the religious ceremony was done, I was invited by the priest to deliver my speech. I took the podium. I felt like I had a lump in my throat. I couldn't get my daughter's eyes out of my head. Today we are mourning Bernard Circus, the father, husband, and loyal servants of this country. Toward the back of the crowd, I spotted members of the Red Youth, wearing red shirts and black bands of mourning on their arm. They seemed ruly, and were respectfully bowing their heads. There was complete silence except for the sound of raindrops. These two know. I'm not going to criticize his political beliefs at his funeral. It's known that I disagreed with him. I don't need to say it here. The true comrade fought for what he believed in. No, I'm not going to say that. Again, that would paint me on his side, and people know I'm not. It's a great loss for us all. Make sure unfortunate events such as this never happen again. Dream of unified Sordland in the next month. We need to fulfill his dream and band together. Yes. Though not necessarily his dream. I interpret this as an attack against Sordland and by extension against me personally. No, that's making it about me. It's his funeral. I promise you this, the blood of Bernard will not remain on the sacred ground of Sordland. Huh? The hell does that even mean? I'm going to say number 2, it could be misinterpreted, but we do want to unite Sordland. Let us all mourn the passing of Bernard Circus and remember him well. But hatred begets hatred. There is only one way to overcome this vicious cycle. We must unite against the evil of the world. The tears of his family he left behind have a price that needs to be paid. I'll not stop and... No, that sounds vengeful. And yes, even though I didn't necessarily agree with him, I will recite one of his poems. Our only strength is the will survive, knowing that we will perish, knowing nothing more absolute. We rise toward the sun. Those who died, died fighting. They are now buried in the sun. No need to mourn. There is a raid to the sun. They did not let us sing our songs. They are afraid of the dawn. They are afraid of hope, but our songs... A moment of silence, please. You know, it's a funny thing. When I grew up in Britain, the Remembrance Day celebrations, or commemorations, had a minute's silence. Might have even been a 2-minute silence. I think it was a minute. Having moved to the USA as an adult, it seems to ask for a moment's silence, as if a minute is too long to spare for people. And that's not the USA, that seems to be the modern world. Surely we can spare a minute or two to reflect and think of what we need to change in ourselves and assist in changing with the nation. During the sounds, all that was heard were the ravens. Some attendees started clapping, some crying. The coffin was lowered into the grave by the gravekeepers. After a couple of minutes, Bernard Circus was with the soil no more. As we bid farewell to Bernard, I want to close with the words every sword lives by. Morgana Vescor. Everyone replied, Vengeance is da. Victory is close. With applause, I stepped down from the podium. It was time to leave. The widow thanked me with a soft and defeated voice before we dispersed. On my way back to the car, I still couldn't get the eyes of Bernard's daughter, nor the faltering voice of his wife out of my head. Would Diana, Monica, and Frank look the same way if something happened to me? Peter put his hand on my shoulder. That was a good speech. I sensed only respect from his voice. Thank you, I mean it. I know you do, he said. Come on, it's time to go. We've got work to do. He was right. We had work to do, so much more to do. I realised that the rain had stopped and I looked up. The black clouds slowly dispersed and sunbeams enlightened our surroundings. As someone once said, even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. Hope was still on the horizon. Let's check the news. The whole sword post. Those who died fighting. Huge crowds of mourners, including President Rain and other senior Swordish officials, joining for a rare display of unity, poured into the heart of Dyer today. Bid farewell to Bernard Circus, the poet and politician who was shot and killed at the gates of Maroon Palace after Rain's inaugural ball. With hundreds of police officers in riot gear on duty and traffic barred on major thoroughfares, the normally chaotic section of the city took on a sombre atmosphere. Millennialist anthems played from the loudspeakers along Freedom Avenue as Swordish citizens of various ethnicities stood shoulder to shoulder, many of them in tears, others leaning out of windows over the balcony railings to watch the procession. President Rain gave a unifying message to all of Sordland by attending the funeral. He paid his respects to Circus and met with his close relatives. Rain also made an emotional speech that touched thousands of attendees. He finished his speech with a quote from Circus: We rise toward the sun, those who died fighting. They're now buried in the sun, no need to mourn. Suzerain to the sun. President Rain's last farewell to Bernard Circus from Sordland today. Scenes of compassion, unity and respect were recorded during the solemn funeral of Bernard Circus, which the VP and President attended. President Rain has shown respect and grace by letting Red Youth members enter the funeral to give their final goodbyes to their fellow traveller. This show of compassion is what the country deserves at this period of uncertainty. The new era of the Rain administration indicates that the divisions of the country might soon be healed. I wonder if that's the influence of Caronte having that printed. Because it could be spun in a different light, of course. Briefing on the current diplomatic situation in Blue Mansion, Lockhaven. The Blue Mansion in Lockhaven hosted us for an important diplomacy gathering. The door opened and David Visky, once a lecturer to me, now the Minister of Foreign Affairs, gently made his way toward my desk. May I sit down, Mr. President? Of course, it's a pleasure to see you, Mr. Whiskey. Likewise, we have so much ahead of us to accomplish. There's no point in telling him to drop formalities. It's an official meeting. He slowly sat down, taking care not to aggravate his arthritis in his knees. He'd always had an air of gravitas about him, and old age had only served to deepen that. After he settled himself, he regarded me with delight, his blue eyes sparkling. Look at you, Anton, the fourth president of Sordland. What a privilege for me. I still remember the first day you took my class at Halsall State University. Somehow the inexplicable ebb and flow of life has led us here, to positions where we can change the course of history. This is our opportunity to shape the future, and we will do precisely that. I'm looking forward to our new foreign policy. He started coughing again, this time for longer. Would you like some tea or water? Oh yes, please. Tea and water sound nice. Thank you very much. He smiled. Olivia brought 2 cups of tea, along with a glass of water, and placed them on the table. It seems you still remember how much I like tea. Nowadays, it really does wonders for my throat. So how is your wife Catherine doing? My lovely Catherine is energetic as usual. Age has hit me harder than her, for sure. She still does her daily jogs, unlike me. Nothing can challenge time. Nothing, indeed. How is the Rain family? Monica is really taking the First Lady role. Speak positively. As time passes, I realise it more. Family is the most important thing in life. We must take care of them. The door opened. Joseph and Lucien joined us for a briefing as the tall case clock hit the hour mark. Petter, however, was missing. I wondered if he was late from the drinking he did at the party in Lockhaven. We'll talk more later, Miss President. Welcome, everyone. How's your travel to Lockhaven? Joseph said a little bumpy due to the turbulence. I arrived via a military cargo plane that landed at Lockhaven International. Let me be reminded. Minister of Defence, yes. Yes. And Lucien is our strategist. Good. I took the train. It was a little slow, but I still recommend it for the beautiful landscape. I also had the possibility of working on a couple of things during the ride. Well then, since Mr. Vectorn doesn't seem to be coming today, said Lucien, apparently with a frown, I think we are ready to start. I will start by providing a brief overview of the current status with our neighbours. What would you like to start with? Tell me about Agnolia. Our brotherly nation to the northeast, Agnolia, they are still diplomatically non-aligned and probably has one of the most democratic systems between our neighbours. Economic stagnation is a worry for them. Their primary issue is their heavy reliance on foreign investment from us. Agnolia is our most friendly neighbour. We have been allies for the longest time, said David, after Rumburg annexed Dome. This fact needs to be part of the equation. Unsurprisingly, the Agnolian Prime Minister, Martin van Horten, is expecting better cooperation through a new, fairer trade deal with us, one of his election mandates. We'll think about his request. The matter is still on the table. I'm not going to yield power, but we might be able to incorporate that some way. We could secure them as allies if we make concessions in a new agreement. Rumburg is a common threat. Additionally, yes, but if we don't give them new agreements, Rumburg is still a common threat. Additionally, the latest numbers indicate that currently 1 million Agno-Sordish citizens live in the Agnan Legion of Sordland. Which, said Lucien, creates a link between foreign policy and our internal affairs. These people have suffered socioeconomically, which led them to crime and other problems. In addition, said Joseph, a relaxed immigration policy was one of Agnolia's main requests, which is unacceptable. Most of the migrants in our country haven't even assimilated in Sordish culture. Adding more won't help. New people could strengthen the economy, though. Quite often, immigrants provide quite a boost to an economy, adding far more than they take out. I think that's a thing we can consider. I'm supportive of relaxed immigration. I would rethink the matter seriously because it has a great influence on our society and values. We should remember that we promised to tighten our... Oh, I'd forgotten that. I want to know about Valkland. Our cousins across the old Machian Sea wish to have a good relations with us. As we all know, Valkland is a socialist republic aligned with United Cortana, who are messing with us. They are an important regional player, also the most significant sea power in Eastern Mercopa. We had hostile relations with them after several wars in the 19th century, which we wouldn't want to experience again. Recently, the relationship has warmed up thanks to Emmerich Hegel. As a result, diplomatic talks can be conducted in the future. Breaking the ice could be good if we are to rise diplomatically. Many nations have a haunted past between them. Look at the United Kingdom and the USA. Now strong allies. In the past, well. I agree they could be potential allies in my opinion. The situation in the region necessitates that we find allies. They haven't been in good relations with us for the past 200 years. Recently, they have also joined the Communist Cortanan Security Pact, subjugating themselves and United Cortana. On top of that, territorial issues flared up between Agnolia and Valsland because of the Helgeland Island. Swedish Navy is very concerned with this volatile situation. Lucian looked slightly worried. Unfortunately, he said, billions of Swedish rent worth of cargo is transported close to Valkland maritime borders, on the Markian Sea and the Grey Strait. This causes significant risk to our imports and exports in the case of deterioration in relations. Strait is of high strategic value to us. Joseph, the Navy is keeping an eye on this situation from the distance, right? Said Lucian. We are effectively monitoring the sea routes and cargo ships. For now, there is no immediate threat, but we don't know what can happen in the future. The latest situation in Velen. It is tumultuous in the south, as always. Victor Smolak is expanding his powers among protests from Wellag citizens. However, he's quite positive about normalization of relations between our countries. Reports indicate that they have been warming up to the Cortanan international aid. As you know, Welland's stability was always a concern for the region. But if we want to help them, we must not treat refugees like we did in the 30s. I still can't stomach the inhumanity of those people suffered, said David. A trade agreement? Okay. Why help such a disorganized state? No. Actually, there can be strong reasons to help a disorganized state. A disorganized state is more likely to breed extremists who can't be controlled. Sordland paid enough by housing millions of refugees. No more. A trade agreement, I think. There have been many bargaining chips discussed, but Welland could be a new partner in the region, but also invest in stability there. Our main goal should be to avoid a refugee crisis like the late 1920s. That civil war had major security and economic repercussions on the Swedish soil. One of the demands of President Smolak was to tighten our immigration laws, so the political refugees don't escape to Sordland. There has been a recent purge that pushed many Bludish free to Bergia. It is definitely troubling. Well, we have said, as you reminded me, we'll tighten our immigration policies. Government Outpost has regained its importance due to this. I'm sure you would remember that winter at the border of the outpost, Miss President. He was right, I did remember that winter. I remember the despair when the refugees' eyes we forcefully escorted back to the Welland border. It's our national interest to prevent a formation of a failed state on the western border. Welland has been increasingly aligning itself towards the Communist Alliance. Another point to analyse, said Lucian. Let's move on. Two important neighbouring countries remain, Lesbia and Rumburg, which would you like to hear about first? Tell me about Lesbia. Our southern neighbour is aligning itself more and more with Arcasia. Lesbia is currently led by Prime Minister Patricio Alvarez. They are the jewel of the continent and the second largest economy in Macopa. Though wealthy, Lesbia suffers from excessive economic inequality. Our past relations have been great, but during the last decade, their investments in Sordland dwindled due to our instability. Allying with the richest regional nation could be beneficial. It could be, but it would also mean that we would draw close to the Arcasia bloc and near the Arcasian Treaty Organization. I'm certain that the recession has a lot to do with their retraction of investments. Once they see that money isn't in the picture, they vanish rather quickly because they are capitalists. Fair point. They have shown a selfish attitude during, well, of course, it's their nation, why wouldn't they? During the Welland Civil War, by closing their borders and funneling refugees to cross into Sordland. Lucian cleared his throat. The capitalism of Lesbia is inspirational to me. Look at their economic power. They are very different. It will be hard to see eye to eye. I'd like to build... See, this is the thing. We must maintain our own values. But I would like to build with powerful nations. I don't like siding with Cortana because they're already inspiring violence in our nation. I completely agree. Lesbia has for too long been benefited from us through our old tariffs. They are after exploitation. There are hundreds of very privileged oligarchs who invest inside and outside Lesbia, said Lucian. Some made significant business investments in the cities of Benfi and Valgan. What's the situation with Rumburg? Now to the troublesome nation, Rumburg. A constitutional monarchy led by Queen Beatrice of Livingston. I highly advise caution and calculated action against Rumburg. Our military must be prepared. The threat is real, agreed. They are strong and have the motivation as well as the means to damage us. We shouldn't give them any reasons to pursue aggression. We must prevent them from interfering in our affairs. They have shown similar behaviour to their neighbouring countries before, but we must be cautious. While Thornburg openly denies such claims, their past and current situations make it clear they want to destabilise us, said Joseph. The weapons caches found by our... I thought United Cortana had done things too. Maybe I was mistaken. By our intelligence agency clearly shows that what their goals are. Our military must be steadfast and our diplomacy valiant. Joseph looked stern and full of resolve. The Rumburg threat is one of our top priorities, you can be assured of that. We're always in dialogue with our Rumburg ambassador to make sure a channel is open to solve disputes. We could use their aggressive attitude against them by convincing the international community, said Lucian. Lucian grabbed the Lockhaven Times newspaper and put his finger on the article about the latest diplomatic incident. Their abrupt announcement about the closure of the Rumburg consulate in Lockhaven is yet another step in their escalation. This covers the overview of the current situation, said David. We will move on to our trade choice and the response to Rumburg's diplomatic escalation. The sun began to set over the hills surrounding Lockhaven. The team was ready to give advice on the new trade initiative and the response to the latest diplomatic incident with Rumburg. Petter arrived late and a little rougher than usual. It must have been the drinking from last night. Hey there, folks. Excuse my delay, he said. I'm sure I didn't miss anything we didn't already know. You were still supposed to be part of this meeting, said Joseph. Also on time. Punctuality is important, said Lucian. We are talking about serious subjects here. They have a point, Petter. We should have discipline in the cabinet. Excuse me, it won't happen again, said Petter. Lucian and Joseph looked at Petter before David moved away from the subject. The Vice President will be part of the trade delegation, so it is great to have input on that subject, but also on the Rumburg incident. There are two issues at hand. Which should we tackle first? Talk about the diplomatic incident. Rumburg Consul Sir Ron Harrington announced that the closure of the 120-year-old consulate. Now the diplomatic staff is leaving this city to go back to Thornburg. He blamed the lack of security in Sordland due to the assassination and the subsequent protests, said Lucian. But it's obvious that they are making excuses. Bastards, said Joseph. First they close their consulate and then they blame our security. Well, their concerns could be genuine, but this reaction is unnecessary. Agreed. Other diplomatic missions have worked with our security units to increase the protection of staff and buildings. The neglect of President Alfonso and the chaos of the elections delayed our diplomatic efforts, said David. Now there are only 2 Rumberg diplomatic missions left in Sordland. One is the consulate in Dyer, and the other is the embassy in Holsword. We're accustomed to the usual rhetoric, but this is far more serious. They are playing with fire. Look at what the Welland destabilization has done to the region. Sordland breaking apart would tear Mekoppa apart. In my entire career, I've never seen our Rumberg relations suffer this much. The previous low point was the annexation of Dome, said David. Yusuf was furious. He barely kept himself from slamming his desk. There are worrying developments like the smuggled arms and the build-up near the border. Our military must be buffed up to stand against a regional power like Rumberg. We either respond to this aggressive act with a diplomatic condemnation, said David, or we retaliate by closing our consulate in Dome. I won't say that an escalation would be risky this early in our presidency, said Lucian. We should focus on creating a negative image of Rumberg in the international scene. The people of Sordland must be protected, said Joseph, no matter what the cost. I say we respond equally. Official diplomatic response is minor. But I don't want to close the consulate, because that is a feed of information from there. As you wish, Mr. President, I shall begin work by immediately informing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Weighing the international stage is a key in long-term strategy. I wish we had reacted more strongly, said Joseph. If we don't confront them, they will keep escalating the situation. This is entirely possible, Joseph, but also if we confront them, we may be at war within minutes. I, on the other hand, am glad that we are taking a more cautious road, said Petter. We should move on to a new trade initiative. Our primary goal will be to successfully sign a trade agreement with one of our smaller neighbours. We have 2 options with our trade agreement. Start a new negotiations with our old partner Agnolia, and forming a new cooperation with Welland. Tell me about the trade deal with Agnolia. First off, the reason behind this option is far more diplomatic than economic. Although, of course, we can't forego the added economic value. Agnolia is an ally and a valuable trade partner. The point we are at with the early negotiations is around the steel trade. They are demanding that we buy their steel for a higher price. That is, because they think that the deal is far too unbalanced as it is. Their second main demand is a privileged access to our agricultural market. We are to fulfill their demands. In return, they will be offering a full alliance with Sordland against Rumberg. Looking at the current situation, said Joseph, advance of Rumberg near our borders, having a coalition against Rumberg would prove extremely useful. Obviously, there will be consequences for entering a full alliance. Mainly the issue is around Hedgey Island. Wildland has clear intentions on taking over the island one way or another, and entering a military alliance with Agnolia will make them furious. I want to state my support of the decision to stick to our old ally, Agnolia, said Joseph. Even though I disagree with their demand to relax immigration, we have cooperated with them on many issues in the past. There are obviously subjects that we would still need to tackle, like our economies, the traded goods, and what to do with immigrants. My opinion is that this is a good deal, said David, and we should go for it. The new Agnolian Prime Minister is trying to improve the existing relationship. The downside is we would need to make concessions, said David. A reality of any trade deal. I would be open to creating a new agreement that would satisfy all sides. I don't want to give them any concessions. Can't position against Wildland. Given the danger to our navy and transport, I'm not sure positioning against Wildland is good. And building the alliance there could, of course, lead to war with Rumberg. but it may also be necessary if that occurs. That would be the best outcome. You decide that Agnolia is a good option. Another point is that they have a very democratic system. After recent elections, the PM has a mandate to arrange a fairer deal with us. Martin Van Horten also is an avid supporter of relaxed immigration. Since we said we will tighten immigration, he might be reluctant. Yes, this is the problem as well, is that they really don't align with us. Starting the highway construction in England plays a part too, which we've done. And that's so many conflicting and positive aligning factors. Regardless, we are going to increase our regional influence to previous levels. We might need to make amends with our neighbours. Ultimately, the decision will be up to you as always. Now tell me about Welland. Dealing with a fractured country like Welland has its positives and negatives. Although it will be lucrative in the short term, there are risks associated with dealing with such a country. They are proposing co-investment projects with a no-tariff agreement. They are also offering oil in return for attracting foreign capital interest from Sordland. However, it is possible that there will be international ramifications of getting close to a country like Welland. All in all, this is a very lucrative deal for us, said David. However, we need to think about the consequences. I certainly don't support the decision to become friendlier with Welland, said Joseph. We carried their burdens for decades. The migrants flooded our country, and now they are expecting a deal from us. Maintaining influence with Welland could prove useful, said Petter. Yes, it's a risky, but think about the influence on an underdeveloped region like that. We could also sell more products and enter their market easily. I am of the opinion that it's simply too risky, said David. Yes, we would gain resources and immediate capital, but I'm afraid of the consequences. They align with us best. But there are risks. And we are building the highway towards Agnolia. Too risky. And to agree. If we wish to go forward with the deal when the time comes, there's a topic of immigration to consider. Victor Smolak is a known isolationist. Our promise to tighten our immigration policy will increase the likelihood of the deal. He believes our borders need better security. I personally don't like the idea of getting too close to Welland. Me too, said David. Agreed, said Joseph. I think we should give it a try, said Petter. Since we did not promise to align with neither east nor west, it is very likely that their concerns would be more around the deal itself. We also need to consider the effect of our economic doctrine plan. The fact that we are headed towards a planned economy will have an influence. Good negotiators optimize the interests, which makes a difference become trivial, allowing both sides to reach a deal. Very true, Mr. Vecton, said David. We have a lot of time to prepare before the scheduled visits to Welland and Agnolia. I believe this gives a brief overview of our current options. Our trade delegation will begin work toward the end of the year. We expect a final negotiation and the signing of to happen next year. I'm very much looking forward to visiting Steelport and Wits with party animals like David and Simon. Well, Petter laughed. Joseph narrowed his eyes and stared at him. Well, that concludes our meeting, Mr. Rain. Have a good day and enjoy Lochagan. I will take my leave then, sir. The meeting concluded and the team dispersed. Our diplomatic action plan officially began. And we will follow that up next time. I'm thinking we will support Agnolia, because we're building a highway through Agland to there, whereas down here with Welland, things are chaotic. Even the transportation of goods could be very, very difficult. Alright, I've been Yorkie the Talespinner, and this has been Tales Over Coffee.